sort of do the same sort of thing, using this as a precedent?
Yes, of course you can. You don't need me.
Yeah. Well, it's just as a guide.
Well,
I was thinking, if throw out the government, where would that leave us for now if the government was thrown out? Would we be open up to the United Nations?
Now look, if you do your protests and the government gets thrown out like that, they throw out the whole government and anybody that is backing those protests, because we've got a lot of foreigners backing those protests. There are many, many strangers in there and we don't know who they are. There are many religious groups that think that they want to take over. And so if they throw the parliament out like that, then you're going to leave a vacuum and they'll just come in and make any laws that they like. But if you go through the court and you do it the correct way and you show the court how the parliament is ruling you arbitrarily, how they're not making laws in the protection of you and they're not doing things correctly, because I can show voter fraud. I've got the voter fraud here, and I can show how they've manipulated the votes. And so then you can go through the court and you can show the court what the parliament is doing wrong. And it is at that time that the courts can interfere and order parliament to stand down. Now, behind the parliament, you've got people that are always there. They don't just walk into parliament and take over the whole country with no backup. There are permanent secretaries there and there are people that are permanently there. And when new governments come in, they advise the new governments on every single thing that they want to do. That's why there are people like Chris Barfoy who know nothing about law but got to be Minister of Justice, because he's got a whole team behind him that are doing all of that. So those people stay, but those people are not allowed to make laws. They're not allowed to vote on laws. They're not allowed to. So then you would get an interim government that would take over until new elections can be held, and they will make sure that in the new elections, all of the complaints of why the government was removed, they would fix all that first. Yes.
You better get on to
And then they will have elections, and then you will have a nice, smooth, and the interim government, because they've done it here in Thailand, the interim government are not allowed to make any laws. They're only allowed to make temporary restrictions to make sure that the country doesn't turn into chaos, but they're not actually allowed to make laws or anything like that. And order, because then they do make orders, but any order that they make is only very temporary because they're not elected by the people. So they take over everything. That's an interim government. So they're always ready for that. So,
would it be better to go to try and get them to take the government out, or would it be better to put cases forward to say that we don't want to have, we don't want to be under the Health Act?
I'm thinking that in for my work, what I'm trying to do, and I'm very lonely and I'm doing it by myself and it's quite hard. But what I'm thinking is I'm going to ask for an immediate repeal of the 1990 Bill of Rights, because it is a dismal failure. It has done nothing but cause chaos in our countries. And so I'm going to apply for a repeal of an immediate repeal, or an immediately temporary restriction on the 1990 and any laws that come out of it. And I'm going to ask for the removal of the government, and if not the removal on the government, at least a temporary restriction on the laws that they are able to make until things get sorted out. Because they change it. I started out on the path that you are starting on, that I thought, oh, I'll go and fight this law, and then they'd make another law, and I thought, oh, I'll go and fight this law. And I realised that it didn't matter how many cases that we took through, even if we win the case, they're just going to rewrite another law to counteract the case that you just won. Eh?
Go to the top,
Cut
cut the snake's head off and work down.
But so I think that people disagree with me, and so I'm not going to dispute about whether people should disagree with me or not. But I'm thinking that they should be temporarily. We have to put on hold everything that they're doing, and cut the head of the snake in the correct way.
Yes.
Because people are being led astray, vulnerable people that don't really understand this. They don't understand the constitutional law or their law, but they're getting advice to go in under 1990. Aren't they? That's what's happening. So we need to put the brakes on it. You know?
And it doesn't matter who you put into power, because even it doesn't matter if you put in national or you put in fairy or who you put in, because they're going to have exactly their same dictator laws to work with. Your problem is that the country is using dictatorial, arbitrary laws against you, and you cannot stop them. So what's to stop the next person doing the same thing? Do you think they're going to be honest and lovely? They aren't.
No. They've got an agenda.
People are corrupt. All people, every single one of us. You, me, the farmer, the priest, the doctor, we're all corrupt. It doesn't matter. If anybody is going to get $1 million, I'm going to give you $2 million if you do this, and if you're poor, you're going to take it. Somebody will say, oh, my friend's just got this little crime, can you get them out of it? People are born, well, it is a fact. People are born corrupt. Because
Monster man.
we are born innocent only for a very short time. I think we become corrupted from about 2 years old when we start to do naughty things, when we know that we're not supposed to be doing them. We're all corrupted. And every single parliamentarian, priest, doctor, they will all become corrupted, because that's what God said, and that's why Jesus died for us. So that, because he knew we were going to sin. They knew by 1688 they had tried everything for hundreds of years to get people to not be corrupt and to govern and to help govern things, to stop the chaos. And every single person that ever arrived in power, when they arrived there, they were lovely, and 1 or 2 years in, they all became corrupted, because the only way they could stay there was by being corrupt and dictatorial.
Yes.
It is true. So, but what we need to look at is how we have allowed our legal system to become so bad that they can change a law in the middle of the night and not even have anybody's permission. Because that's what they're doing. You go to the court and you win the case, and they rewrite a new law.
Yeah.
So,
I know. And so many people are so unaware.
yeah, so my way is the slow way. But I think it is, in my view, it is the better way, that you put up with the bullshit that you've got to put up with now. We know we can't trust National. We know we can't trust. We know that we can't trust. It doesn't matter who you put in there. You cannot trust them until we put our constitutional law back that was removed from us in 1986. So what we need to do is I've got all the crimes that they've committed, got a list of them, and then I've got to write it all up. I've got the outline. I've got all my papers here. Got all my printed acts that they've all done of all these people, that have all the crimes that they've committed while they've been in Parliament and still not lost their jobs. Do you know I'm talking about New Zealand now, not Australia, but New Zealand. Do you know that there are dozens there are just every single one of these sheets here is a parliamentarian dating back to the year 2006 who have committed crimes while they've been in our Parliament and never been prosecuted and still working in our Parliament today.
Whoa.
Yes, this is a few that I printed off this morning. So we've got all the evidence right here. We're going to put that in, and we're going to say these are all of the crimes that they've committed in our Parliament, and we will ask for a temporary injunction. And this is what, if you look at the Fitzgerald case here, everyone can see I'm very passionate.
Oh, yeah.
So if you look at the and I'm very bossy, everyone will have to excuse me because I am just very bossy. But I was teaching for 30 years and bossing around the children all the time, and it's just stayed in me that I'm a bossy person, but I really don't mean to be. Everyone, please forgive me. All right. So if you see here, what did he use? Fitzgerald and Muldoon is one of New Zealand's leading constitutional decisions, heard in the Supreme Court. In 1976, the decision considered whether press statements by Prime Minister Robert Muldoon had breached Section 1 of the Bill of Rights 1688, that the pretended power of suspending of laws or the execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal. We'll go to that law in a minute. The third Labour government had passed a New Zealand Superannuation Act requiring employees and employers to make matching compulsory contributions to the superannuation. And David Williams was a single man by himself, said that the National Party then used all possible parliamentary devices to oppose this legislation and promised to repeal it immediately. Let's see. Where's the ruling? Oh, the plaintiff Fitzgerald was just talking about his money. I'll go down to the judgment. The judgment decided in favour of the plaintiff on one issue, that the Prime Minister's purported suspension of the operation of the Superannuation Act 1975 was illegal as being in breach of S1 of the Bill of Rights, that the plaintiff is entitled to a declaration. And he got a declaration. The first sentence of the third paragraph, however, and the fourth paragraph amount together to an unpronounced.
Sound's gone off.
Oh, no, it hasn't gone off. Can you hear me?
Sorry, yep.
It's just me being quiet reading. Yeah, I'm just reading what he said about S1.
Yep.
Okay, so he had suspended the superannuation for a short time, and then as he had suspended it, that was illegal for him to suspend laws. So this is basically what the Parliament is doing right now. They are suspending laws, right? And so that comes under your 1688, which I've lost now. Right, in this session, I didn't want to get into individual laws. what I wanted to talk to you in this session was the rights that you have. And, all right, I just want to show you, okay, actually I've changed my mind. I want to show you this one. Right, I'm going to I'm on the wrong one. All right, I'm going to the Act of Settlement, 1701, which comes from the right, the Imperial Act. I think I'll just share the whole screen and then everyone will see everything.
Oh, under the Imperial Act. Yeah.
Right, so I've got two here. One is the all right, that's turned out a bit pear-shaped, this video, but okay. So I've got two here. Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Right, so I've got the Act of Settlement here, and I've got the Imperial Laws Act of 1988, right? And the Imperial Laws Act of 1988 The Imperial Laws Act of 1988 tells you in Schedules 1 which laws continue to apply in New Zealand. And you'll see there that they've got Magna Carta 29, and then they've got some Edwardian laws, and then they've got the Petition of Right, and then they've got the 1688 Bill of Rights.
Is it?
Beautiful.
Have you got that?
No.
That is the Imperial Laws Application Act 1988.
Which section?
And then you go and then go down to
It's Schedule 1. You don't know the other way because you've just reached the
okay. Schedule 1.
oh, I had it before.
Yeah,
Is
got
it-
it.
Was it Schedule 2? Schedule 1.
No,
Okay,
Schedule 1.
number 3. Application of Imperial Enactments. And then, all right, there it goes. And then, did you get that click one? All right, so it goes to Schedule 1.
Constitutional enactment.
Yeah, and then when you go, and then go to it, so it says the 1688 Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then go to the Act of Settlement. And then if you see the Act of Settlement, what it will say, the laws and statutes of the realm confirmed.
Sorry, section 4 says it's withheld.
Oh,
Was it?
no, I've gone wrong. Oh, go to view whole. Okay. Right, have you got view whole?
Oh,
Yeah, can you click view whole on the Act of Settlement 1700?
yeah.
Have you got, all right.
So it's the status, is that the one? Or are we on the wrong one?
It says Act of Settlement 1700 and then click view whole. And then, oh, now I keep forgetting where I have to go. Oh, dear. Oh, dear, I had it and now I've forgotten. Go to, where do I have to go? Go to laws and statutes of the realm confirmed, and you'll see section 4.
No.
Have you got that?
Yeah.
And here, that's what I'm looking for. I get a bit confused. Yeah, and then you'll see what it says here. It says, other imperial enactments and imperial subordinate legislation not part of the laws of New Zealand. That I told you about before. So all subordinate laws in every single country are not part of the laws of New Zealand. Only New Zealand has its own subordinate laws. All new laws in New Zealand are subordinate laws. And it means that they can be overridden at any time. But the 1688 can never be overridden. So it is in your legislation. Yes. And then if you go to no, the 1688 is constitutional. All laws not from the 1688 are subordinate laws. The only law that's not is the 1688. It's a constitutional highest law. And you bypass all of the lower courts directly to the highest Supreme Court. So all the other laws just go to the lower court. So that 1990 is only going to the lower court. It's not going to the Supreme Court.
Right.
As you saw on Muldoon's, it goes directly to the Supreme Court when you use the 1688. But if you add any human rights laws onto your application, it will not go.
No.
It's done.
No.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why you must not do that.
Okay.
So you can see here that it continues to be, it says here, imperial enactments in force in New Zealand, and it's got the 1688 Bill of Rights. And then it's got the Act of Settlement, which you can go and read. And then it's also got a couple of amendments that were made. And then you can go to the accession. There was an alteration to the, yes, there was an alteration. Can you see mine? All right, how did I find that? Was it section 1? If you go to section where it said, if you go to where it says section 1, and you click that, that says no dispensing of power or execution of laws by regal authority. So that's what they're doing now is illegal. It really is. And then if you click section 9, section 9 is about the corruption and bribery of the minister, which is an offence in the Crimes Act.
But we don't want to use, you wouldn't use that, would you? Crimes Act?
No, you wouldn't use, you would not use a single imperial subordinate law.
No.
So you wouldn't?
No. You wouldn't add Crimes Act into it because then it becomes subordinate and you have to go through the lower courts rather than going to the High Supreme Court.
I'm trying to find the oath. There's an oath that you have to, they changed the oath. Well, I can't find it.
That one's horrible because they're going to stick solely with this and everything is going on with that.
So anyway, I'm not going to stay there. I'll take that out. But anyway, the point that I just wanted to make to you is that from the 1988 imperial law, you see that it's still 1688 is still very much a part of New Zealand law. You see that, right?
There's no laws. Then why is it that they're saying?
Why they want to throw all the extra human rights and things in there?
Well,
why are lawyers?
Well, because the 1688 Bill of Rights is the only means that you have to remove Parliament. And so they don't want you to use it. They don't want people running off getting these declarations every 5 minutes. It's for, your deepest emergencies. You can't be going to the Queen every 5 minutes crying your little baby eyes out. Can you? You can.
No.
You got to, it's for very desperate times, and these are desperate times.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So this gives you the power to, if they can avoid it going through a court case, they will try to negotiate with you outside of the courts. But if, because it's better for them if they can negotiate with you and let you win outside of the courts, because once these declarations get made in the court, it becomes constitutional law, and it can never, ever, ever, they can never do that thing ever, ever again, because it has been written into the constitutional law as a declaration. So that's why they don't like you to use it. But in fact, that I said to you to go and get a declaration for your forfeiture of person and your against the injections, right? But if they can get you to write a letter to the Attorney General and ask him for a letter to give you an exemption, they would rather do that than have this placed in a court, because once that goes into the court, they can never make another law doing this ever again. So they've given you this bullshit.
Yeah.
It is bullshit that you can go to the Attorney General and ask him for an exemption from having a vaccine, but only under very special circumstances can you get that. But
It's only less than 100. Less than 100 will be, and then so I don't know who those printed are, because if you're immunocompromised, you need to have it.
Well, no, because it's your right. It is your right to say no to be putting things into your body when you don't want them to. And I just don't. Anyway, so this 1688 Bill of Rights is it is the natural law. Don't you see that? It is the natural law, and therefore they cannot go against it because it comes from God's creation. And so if you can show them that they have gone against God's creation, then so the animals in the forest walk freely, right? And the animals in the forest get sick, right? And then sometimes they die. And that is natural law. And when somebody comes along into the forest and injects all of those animals from those, they're interfering with the natural law.
Natural selection.
And it is, and that's illegal. They're not allowed to do it. And that's why we have national parks when they're not allowed to do it. Now, let's get on to here.
Do you know anyone who's ever used the sort of Islamic Sharia law to become a
The Islamic, now I have to come back. I'm going to cancel. I was going to go. What are we talking about now? Islamic law. You can't have Islamic law in New Zealand. Honestly. What? 5 wives and 4?
I think there's Sharia law in Australia, but basically Sharia law they have unto themselves. They don't abide by any of your Australian or any other government but their own.
No, well,
Their own
no, well,
that's my, yeah, I think you're right. That's my understanding.
yes, this has all occurred because the New Zealand, this, no offence to the New Zealand Maori, but the New Zealand Maori, I've already explained this to my other friend, but I'll just say just a little bit. The New Zealand Maori, they renounced the Queen in 1975, and they renounced their subject status. And I'm told that the Maori king went to visit the Queen and renounced his subject status, and they wanted to have their customary law, which they always had. And when they did that, they went straight under the United Nations, because every person has to be under some kind of a right, yes. And when they went under the United Nations, all of the refugees and all of their religions were attached onto the New Zealand Maori. And I'm not going to show it to you today because you'll have to come back for another session. But when they were attached, and it's in the Human Rights Act, Section 5, KII, and when they were attached, since they became part of the refugee family, they wanted all people that came to our countries to be allowed to set up their own self-governance. That's what this is all about. This is why we have to save our Commonwealth, because they want to have Islamic law, have got their own group, and they're going to have their own parliament, and they're going to have all their own laws, and then they're going to have the Jewish group, and they're going to have their own parliament, they're going to have their own laws, then they're going to have the Christian group, the Mormon group, the Jehovah group, they're going to have their own laws and their own parliament, then they're going to have the Christian group, and they're going to have they're going to do all these little communities. This is the experiment. It ain't going to work. We did it 400 years ago. It is not going. It is simply not going to work. So, and it's all paid for by us, the white man, the white slaves, as we always were, the white slaves. So the white slaves are going to pay for all that. And so this is how they've all done it. But they've all got to go through the 1990, which has got the justified limitations to stop them bringing in the most heinous laws. And so they all want self-governance in our countries. And I'm going to oppose that in the Commonwealth. I think they've got plenty of Islamic countries, they've got plenty of Jewish countries, and we've only got our little countries here, and this is the country where those people, if they don't want to be under those restrictions, that they can come to be and be safe. So I think we have to keep our Protestant countries Protestant and let them keep their Islamic countries Islamic. I think it's a fair system.
My understanding was that the UN doesn't want any kind of religious sects at all. That they're abolishing all religion.
No. Well, you'd have to be. Now we're going to go off to another subject, and I haven't got my stuff up to show you, but I'll just tell you. They have put everybody under the Noahide laws. And Noahide. Now, they did it in America, and they've done it in Australia. In America, George Bush introduced Education Day, which was actually celebrating the birth of one of the highest Jewish leaders that wrote the Torah or something. And they went on, well, they said, we only want everyone to follow these 7 simple laws. No harm. Do not worship. No adultery, like do not worship false idols. And then the no killing and all of that. But, hey, no harm. Don't even say that word, no harm. Because in Islamic law and Jewish law, and I even think in Mormon law, some of their laws, if you speak against them, that is a harm. And the penalty is decapitation.
Whoa.
Yes, it is.
Whoa.
And
That's a bit
so you don't, and if you see, and also about the worshipping of idols, if you worship, if you believe in Jesus Christ and that you believe that you have a direct relationship to Christ, and you don't believe that you have to go through, because they believe that you have to go through Moses to get to God. That God will give the laws to Moses, and Moses will give the law, or something like that, or Noah, or I don't know, because I don't do all that stuff, but they believe that the Pope is the only one pure enough to get God's laws from him. And so God will talk to the Pope, and then the Pope will come and tell us what to do. Or God will talk to the Imam, or whatever he's called, and the Imam will come and tell us what to do. And so they believe all that. And then if you don't uphold that, the penalty is decapitation. So that's why we don't follow the no harm law. We follow free speech. We say that speech cannot hurt you. And if I say to you, oh, I don't want to offend anyone here, but if I say to someone, you're all beautiful, but if I say to someone, you're really ugly and I hate you because you're ugly and you've got, I don't like the colour of your face. If I say that to you, if you really love yourself, when you deeply love yourself, you will say, well, bugger off, I don't care. Go away and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'll go find another friend. And if you really love yourself, it doesn't affect you. But when you don't love yourself, people that don't love themselves, they go off and kill themselves, don't they? They say, oh, she said I was an ugly bitch and I feel hurt, and so now I'm going to kill myself because of that. And so, but what we learned when I was a child is that you have to love yourself so much that when people say these things to you, if you really love yourself, it's not going to hurt you. And that is the truth. Well, because God said your body is your temple, and you should love you should love your temple so much. Whatever it is, whatever you got, if you're a woman and you've got a beard growing, or if you've got pimples all over your face, you've got to love everything about yourself. I mean, look at me. I'm no beauty, but I really deeply love myself. So if you deeply love yourself, so the no harm law is very dangerous for us, and that's why I don't ever say it. But we have no cruel and unusual punishment, because that is hurting people. When you go to people and you string them up with their hands tied up and make them stand there for 4 days with no food, well, that's a cruel punishment, and that does hurt people, doesn't it? Yeah. What else do they have in there? Like, they've got the things like, they say in the Jewish law, well, they've got backups, because in the Jewish law, now you see, in Jewish and Islamic law, under the Noahide laws, that when they give a loan to their people, they're not allowed to collect interest. But when they give a loan to us, they call us the Noachites. When they give a loan to the Noachites, they are allowed to charge us interest. And if we don't pay them back, the penalty is death. And if they don't pay their money back, they're not allowed to give the death penalty, because the Jews are not allowed to kill a Jew, and a Muslim is not allowed to kill a Muslim, but they're allowed to kill all the Christians if we dishonour them. So that's the one world religion that they want us all to go under. And that's why they want the freedom of religion. Well, we can't have a freedom of religion because we'll all be dead. Won't we? So, And there are many Muslims and Jewish people that want to have their faith in their religion, but they don't want to have these cruel and unusual punishments either, because there are many punishments for them as well. So they don't want to have them. So the United Nations come up with the bright idea of creating another set of laws that could sit beside our Protestant laws. But they've given themselves too many rights. They've got rights to houses, which we don't have any rights to houses. They've got a right to a job, but you have a right only to a job if there's one available. So they've got many rights. What else have they got? Or they've just got hundreds. So I've written to the judge, because I said to the judge, I said the United Nations has just got too many laws and we're sick of them. So I said the United Nations has become ultra vires, meaning that they've overstepped what they should have asked for, because they should have written a nice small little one that they could have with a few little rights in there and put it next to our law that they could have because that's what they do in Thailand. In all these countries, they have a separate one, and then they can use that one. So that's the Noahide laws, and that's why we don't. So the United Nations is trying to get a freedom of religion where we all come under the 7 Noahide laws, and they say that every religion can follow 7 Noahide laws. Well, every religion except for the Christians and the Protestants, because look at me, I've got a big mouth, and I do, and I just say awful things, and I can't stop myself. It's just like, and I'd be dead 1,000 times over if I was under that law, especially on the Facebook. You see my Facebook. So and so you see, I've probably talked too long now, haven't I? But you see, look.
That's we're getting censorship, isn't it? We're now getting censored because we can't say anything. Everyone is too afraid to speak up. I mean, plus they're being muzzled. So again, it's all part of shutting us down, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can't say, you're racist, you're a white supremacist, you're a neo-Nazi, you believe, it's all these things that are derogatory to anyone that wants to speak up for their rights, freedoms and liberties.
We're a fruit loom.
Yeah, we're a fruit loom.
Well, because
isn't some law coming out soon about the right not to protest, or?
That right does not exist, by the way. There is no right to protest. I'm sorry, there isn't, because that came from they took that from the Magna Carta, Article 61, that said you had the right to protest. Now that right was removed in 1297. It was removed, and they tried putting that into the Thailand constitution, and what happened was all the people went and protested, and they closed down the airports, they closed down all the businesses, they closed down all the roads. Nobody could go to work, and they lost a billion baht. A billion baht is about a few $1 million a day. They were losing a day because they'd closed down the airports. You cannot have the right to protest. You only have the right to protest if the government sees that it's orderly and not trampling on the rights of other people. Now, this protest that you had was trampling on the rights of many, many people. They had blocked the roads with cars. Now, that's a forfeiture of person without conviction, and that was illegal. So they gave you a warning. They said, if you don't move those cars, we're going to come and take them, and you're not going to get your car back. And everybody lost their cars and said the government was bad. But they were blocking the road, and people could not go in the thoroughfare, and that's illegal. So then they set up all the tents and everything on the property there, and were making a mess. And that was interfering with the rights of other people to go to the parliament buildings as they wish to. And so Thailand removed that rule, and it's not even a law. I didn't see that it's law. Can you show me that law? Where is it?
I don't know.
There
Sorry,
isn't
no.
one.
So what was that, sorry?
There is no law. There is no law that you have a right to protest.
Is it freedom of speech? Does it come under that? Oh, but that's under the 1990, isn't it?
You can go to public land. What they said to you is you can come to the public land and you can put up your signs, but you cannot put up your tents and your businesses for selling things and your tarot cards and your music and all of that stuff, your big party that you want to have. They said you can't have that, but you can have your signs and you can all go and stand there, and we ask you if you would go home at night time, please. And I think that's fair. Because just because you want to protest doesn't mean everybody else in the country wants to protest. Some people don't want to. So everybody's got rights. You've got rights and they've got rights. When you use your rights and you trample on other people's rights, then you have lost your right, because you should not trample on other people. And so that's what they're doing with our free speech. Now, let's get here. Does everybody tired? I suppose. Now, I didn't really get to make the video that I wanted. Now, so I didn't. I wanted to explain. I wanted to.
So you were talking about, if the protesters are blocking the roads and stuff, so they're trampling on other people's rights. But what about, for example, like they've got these testing stations and these cars are like there for 3 or 4 hours, and isn't that
Blocking all the...
Isn't that also trampling on other people's rights?
Because you haven't gone and complained, have you? You've just said, oh, I don't like that, and stamped your feet and said, I don't like that, and you didn't go and complain, did you?
So where would you complain to?
Well, you would go and get it. You would go and make a you can make it first. You can go and make a declaration and say that you are blocked from your passage and you're not able to travel to the places that you want to travel because all the roads are blocked. But from what I've seen, they keep one side of the road open. They didn't block the road. Did they block the road?
What with these testing stations?
Yes,
when in Wairau Park, you couldn't get to even the complete block was blocked. You couldn't go. You couldn't get to your destination.
But where were you going? But where would you have been going?
Into Packensay, say, to go and do a shop. And because they had a testing station that's at the entertainment centre, which is on the other side of Packensay, but the queues went right around the whole block, and you couldn't actually get into Packensay from either end.
I haven't seen the evidence, so everything that I always do has to be evidence based, because there's so many people telling not the truth, and so it's not that you're not telling the truth. I'm sure that you are.
Yeah.
But I just mean on Facebook that you know that there's been a lot of people posting stuff that has not been true. And so the footage that I'm only talking about one or two footages that I've seen.
This wasn't at the thing. This is just a testing station.
Yeah.
Last week.
I have seen testing stations, but they have had one line going to the testing station, but they have another path beside it where the traffic can travel freely. That's what I have seen. So if you showed me where the entire road on both sides was blocked and people couldn't get in and out, because I'm not sure that they would have that simply because of ambulances needing to get in and get out. So usually they should have a pathway of getting in and getting out. So you'd have to get a picture to show me before I could make a comment on that. But usually, from what I saw, they would have one line, and then they had one lane that the cars can travel, from what I've seen. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. But if that was the case, then that would be a danger, and then you would go and make a complaint.
Right.
And then you could go to your local council, because it's a temporary thing. The best place to go is to your local council and put a written complaint and say this area was blocked and I was not able to travel on my way. If you don't get a remedy, and then you can take them to the court and they have to pay for your court cases. So, but you don't just have the right to just go and protest and clog up the streets and put up tents. I mean, let's be truthful here about that. I mean, I did support the protest parts of it, but let's be truthful here. They had vans and things there selling products. They had massage tents giving massages. They had tarot cards readings and all of those things. They had bands down there, music, jumping around. There were children. There were children there, and all of those children were in extreme danger the entire time. I don't care what they say. There were many, many, many strangers there and children there that even just only left for 5 minutes could have disappeared. The children were in the tents there. There were some very dangerous people there. So I can't say that this was a healthy protest. Sorry. So they closed it down. There were gas tanks in the tents. There were people going around. We don't know if they lit the fire or who lit the fire, but somebody lit the fire.
Oh yeah, the Antifa dude, that's been proven. There's video footage.
But then couldn't you just say all they wanted was for her to come out and address them, and she didn't? So
No, because that's not the correct thing to do, because everybody's breaking the law here. She's breaking the law, you're breaking the law, they're breaking the law, everyone's breaking the law here. She doesn't have to, and why would she? She's had death threats. She's been threatened to be hanged, to be taken out and hanged. She's been abused. Well, I wouldn't go out. I mean, you have to protect your Prime Minister.
Because she's not listening online. She's not listening to letters. She's not listening to legal procedures. So how does one get her attention?
Well, I'm just saying to you, I'm not saying that she's not at fault, because I think that they have broken many laws also. So I do believe that. So I'm certainly not saying that they are not at fault here, because they are doing, everything that they're doing is based on what other countries are doing. But who cares what other countries are doing, because each country, their duty is to take care of the people in their country. So she's responsible there, right? But I'm saying that the protesters and the lawyers have gone about it in an illegal way. I'm not saying that what you are saying isn't correct, because it is. I'm saying that the manner that everybody is going about it is wrong, and I'm sorry to say, because you have used the wrong law through no fault of your own. And
The
so
wrong remedy. It's the approach, isn't it? I mean, that's not the remedy. The remedy is going through the system, the legal system.
So who's to say it's not, because this was all controlled, this is how they get all their cases now, because their heads have jumped on board.
Yeah, that's what they're
saying, we, you know, if you need any lawyers' help, they'll take it all down the human rights and the Bill of Rights 1990.
And that was the plan.
And that was the plan.
That's the plan, to get the control opposition, to get the cases, to do the arrests.
because
Part of the plan.
they have attached the United Nations law to S28, saying that it's exempt from from the justified limitations. Very dangerous.
And the vulnerable that get caught up in it, they don't, they maybe,
They're ignorant.
yeah, they're ignorant, they don't know, and they're getting caught up in the movement, I guess, and it's not doing, it's it's following the Pied Piper to hell, basically. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Exactly. The Pied Piper, I've put the Pied Piper in my court application. I have said that they have been led in a Pied Piper fashion. Yes, I've said that. Thank you. And I have said, actually, you have been deceived because the government, in my opinion, they have not lied to you, but they have not been honest either. They haven't, all this time, they have not told you that the New Zealand Bill of Rights is not for you. And it actually isn't. It only is for a declaration of inconsistency, that if they make a law and it's inconsistent, they have to go and change it. But they have justified limitations and they can change it if they want. But you come under the natural law, indubitable rights, and I think that the government has a duty to inform you all of that. But all these lawyers...
And this is where we're getting with people going into common law, saying that they are going under natural law, and they're talking about, like, when you've got a birth certificate, you're a dead entity, you're born of the land and all this stuff. So it becomes extremely complex. Maritime law, what was the other law? Statutory law. And so what they're doing is they're bringing them under this umbrella to go out of the corporation, because it's saying that corporation is illegal. It's a foreign government that is running New Zealand as a corporation, but they're opting out of that system. And where are they going to sit?
A refugee.
They're like
Yeah.
They're a refugee.
Yeah.
They've become a refugee. So now and they're not really understanding that they're actually going to be putting themselves in that vulnerable situation to come under a refugee law, or
Well, once the New Zealand or even the Australian natives, once if they get our common law right out completely, because our common law is the only law in the world, even the Pope follows it, is the only law in the world that gives us a mechanism to remove the people that are abusing us in Parliament and in the kingly realm. But the United Nations doesn't have this. The United Nations has thousands and thousands of laws and no mechanism to remove their leaders. There isn't one.
And that's what they want.
Yes.
So again, they've got the Pied Piper saying, "Oh, great, well, opt out of the system, give up your birth certificate, come under an allodial title, do this, do that." But where are they sitting? What instrument are they going to be sitting under? They've left themselves wide open, exposing themselves.
Naked in the jungle. Everyone will be naked in the jungle of the United Nations laws, which the United Nations laws has to cover Islamic people, Jewish people, Christian people, but we all just have to remember Protestant is not any religion, to be honest. An atheist can be a Protestant. Protestant is just anyone that doesn't believe in all of those things that are lording it over them. And so, yeah. So then if you go into that, but the Protestant law doesn't have any hurtful things that will hurt you. It has only things that will protect you and nothing that will hurt you. So I do really want to tell you what your protections are, all right? So I'm going to be bossy and everyone has to be quiet now.
Sorry, we keep interrupting.
Right, so I'm going to, I really wanted to do this today. So we've got our 1688 Bill of Rights. And I'm going to show you the first section, and it says you can go to view whole, and then
Okay.
did you go to view whole?
On which one? The
1688 Bill of Rights. Right, today we're going to do two things. Right, the first one I'm going to show you, and this first one here you'll see an act, go down to where it says preamble.
Yeah.
And it says an act declaring the rights and liberties of the subject and settling the succession of the crown. Now, I want to explain what this one is. This one is where they removed the king. They removed the king and they put in all these restrictions on the king and the papal leaders and the ecclesiastical leaders. And these are the things that the king was doing wrong. So we'll read all of this. It says, whereas Lord Spiritual, now this was a covenant that was made between popes. It was made between popes, and all of the religious leaders agreed on this. So that is the Lord Spiritual who used to rule the world. Next one is and temporal. Temporal are the kings and the queens who also used to rule the world. And then it says and commons. And the commoners are us people that we said we wanted to govern ourselves. Assembled at Westminster, lawfully, fully and freely representing all the estates of the people of this realm. Now this is your land. Every single person upon the date of their birth is entitled to a piece of land according to the population of what size the piece that you're entitled to. They've got it all mapped out. Every single person is entitled to that upon their birth. And that it says, these estates will be in the possession of the king, and they give you back a paper title so that the banks can't take your land. That's the corporation. But they said, if you're all going to govern us, then you've got to follow some rules too. And this was on the 13th of February in the year of our Lord 1688. Present unto their majesties, then called and known by the names and style of William and Mary, Prince and Princess of Orange, being present in their proper persons, meaning their true persons are sitting there. And a certain declaration in writing made by the said Lords and Commons in the words following viz. So this is where they removed the king, and they're telling you why they removed the king. And they replaced the king with Prince William and Mary of Orange. Whereas the late King James II, assistant of divers Evers council, judges and ministers employed by him, did endeavour to subvert and extirpate the Protestant religion and the laws and the liberties of this kingdom. Now, we've got 3 petitions in Parliament as we speak to remove the 1688 Bill of Rights, common law, and put in the 1990. 3 of them. So there is a violation to our person right there. Number 2. So the king was attempting to remove all of their liberties and their common laws. So that's why one of the reasons he had to leave. By assuming dispensing of power, by assuming and exercising the power of dispensing with and suspending laws and the execution of laws without the consent of Parliament. Now, what has happened? Here's where it gets tricky. Because when we vote the Parliament in, that is the consent to the Parliament, right? However, what we can do with that one is that, yes, they are suspending laws and they are executing laws without our consent that is interfering with our common law. So that is not a consent that we need to give. That is something that they have to govern us by, whether we consent or not. So it's regardless that you consent to shut down your free speech, you're entitled to it anyway, and they're not allowed. So that is a suspending of a law that they're not supposed to. Committing prelates. By committing and prosecuting divers, worthy prelates, for humbly petitioning to be excused from concurring to the said assumed power. There have been people that have said that they do not want to be part of their dictator power that they're enforcing on you at the moment. And you are being prosecuted for that. So that would be a reason why we can remove the government. We've had Bishop Tamaki was prosecuted and went to the prison. And so he said, I don't want to follow your laws. I want to go freely and go to Auckland and speak at my speaking engagements that I want to speak. And they said, no, you're not allowed to do that. You go to prison. So that would be a reason for removing the Parliament. Ecclesiastical Commission. By issuing and causing to be executed a commission under the Great Seal for erecting a court called the Court of Commissioners for Ecclesiastical Causes. Well, I don't know if I can use that one, but I think I could if I search around a bit. Levying money. By levying money for and to the use of the Crown by pretence of prerogative for other time and in other manner than the same was granted to Parliament. Now listen to me. When you pay your taxes, you are paying taxes into the common system that is for all of us. When they take $2 million and give it to the homosexual group, and you are not entitled to any of that money or any of the services that they're giving to that homosexual group, well, that is using your money for purposes that was not intended. When they take $2 million and give it to one New Zealand Maori group, and they say this is for New Zealand Maori and Pacifica people, that is money that they're taking your money, your taxes, and they're not sharing it amongst the common people, everybody. They're giving it specifically to this one group. Now, that is not what we granted to the Parliament. Every single one of those payments to the mongrel mob, to all of these people, they're all illegal. All of them. The money that is paid to Parliament is common money for everyone. And anything that is used for a specific group that everyone is not entitled to, then that is not what you granted to Parliament when you gave them your tax money. So that's illegal. A standing army. By raising and keeping a standing army within this kingdom in a time of peace without the consent of Parliament and quartering soldiers contrary to the law. Now, you might think that the standing army is your army that you see down, but what are they bringing into New Zealand? Thousands of United Nations laws that you have absolutely no power over. That is an army of law being used against you. That is illegal. Disarming the Protestants by causing...
How about the, not just UN Army, the laws, they're bringing UN soldiers and tanks.
Yes.
We see them here in New Zealand and in Australia.
Yes, they're bringing in United Nations soldiers, tanks. Thank you for that, because actually they are bringing in armies. They are bringing in armies. And also, it's got disarming Protestants by causing several good Protestants, being Protestants, to be disarmed. At the same time when Papists were both armed and employed. That is so all these United Nations laws are being used in a way to disarm you all. Because they have disarmed you. They gave you the human rights law, and through that they wrote the Health Act for all of their WHO regulations and their whatever regulations that they've got. And then they've used it against you to lock you up, remove your jobs, force you to get injections, Well, they disarmed you first, and then they armed themselves with these laws, and then they used those laws to disarm you. So that is illegal. Next one.
Yeah.
And as Natasha says, they've brought in, because I've got a picture of a United Nations man dressed up on the roof of the Parliament when the protesters were there, and he wasn't a New Zealand officer. So yes, they're bringing in them, and we did not consent, and we have been pretty peaceful, aren't we?
Yep.
Everyone's been pretty peaceful. I don't think it's been anything more than the police can handle. I think it's been enough that the police can handle. I mean, the police are going to have to handle bad people or even a bit crazy people. That's part of their job. But the only time the standing army is when you've actually got a really big war going on, which we don't have. So yes, they're bringing in tanks and United Nations. Next one, violating elections. By violating the freedom of elections of members to serve in the Parliament. Well, I have got, I don't know about Australia, in New Zealand, what they've been doing is these groups in my documentation, these groups like Pacific Island groups, or I don't want to offend anybody here, but I just have to be able to speak freely to express myself. They've got ethnic groups, right? And they've got ethnic groups that have got the courses that they go to, the job places that they go to, and I've got evidence that those organisations before elections have been calling all of the members that go to those places to get them to vote only for Labor, and that's an election fraud. So that's illegal. I've got evidence of that. People saying, yes, I've called 13,000 people from... So they're setting up organisations in our countries, and they're getting those organised, they're telling those organisations, all the people that go to them, all the refugees and all the ethnic people that go to them, telling them how to vote. Now, that is not correct. That's a violation of your elections. Wrong prosecutions. By prosecutions in the court of King's Bench for matters and causes cognisable only in Parliament, and by divers other arbitrary and illegal causes, by prosecutions in the court of King's Bench. All right. So this applies to, we can apply this to the New Zealand Maori, prosecuting people in the King's Bench. So we have to understand that our 1688 law is the imperial law. And it can be, people that violate it can be prosecuted at the King's Bench. But in normal laws, like subordinate laws, they all have to be done in Parliament and not sent to the King's Bench and be prosecuted for. But at that time they were doing that, but our government has not done that. So I think we can leave that one. And just the last one, and whereas of late years, partial corrupt, here, this is ours too. Partial, corrupt and unqualified persons have been returned and served on juries and trials, and particularly divers juries and trials for high treason, which were not freeholders. But we can't use all of this, but what we can use is unqualified persons. This is not in Australia, but in New Zealand. Well, actually, it's in Australia, actually, because in Victoria, what's that name? What's his name? Andrews in Victoria? What's his name in Victoria?
Dan Andrews.
Dan Andrews. He's a Catholic. So he's unqualified to be in Parliament. He's not supposed to be there. He should be removed immediately. So you would use that one for him if you're in Australia. And we've got many unqualified people. We've got Chris Farfoy in charge of, he's Minister of Justice. Hey, wait a minute. Here, I'm going to tell you something funny here. Hang on. Just have to move this for a bit. Wait, I'm just waiting for something to come up for a minute because I have to see it to tell you. It's a bit slow to clean my computer. Come on now. Come up. Why doesn't it come up? All right, we've got... come on now. Right, here it is. I hope it's the right one. So you've got, this is my court case that I'm going to be going to the court with. It's half done. But I can share it because I don't care I don't care what they say about me. So this one, you've got, so unqualified persons. You've got Chris Farfoy, who's the Minister of Justice. Well, he's unqualified. He's a he worked in media. He was a journalist. Where's his qualification to be the Minister of Justice in New Zealand? You've got Alpito Williams CO, Minister of Courts. He's a Samoan High Chief, a paramount chief from Samoa, and he's the Minister of Courts, and he's got no law degrees or nothing. He's unqualified. We've also got, look at this, we've got Chris Farfoy, Minister of Justice, Alpito Williams CO, Minister of Courts, and then Alpito Williams CO, Associate Minister of Justice. So the two of them are working together. And then you've got Chris Farfoy, Minister of Immigration. And then you've got this Twyford guy. He is used to be the director of UNESCO or something. And so he's the Associate of Immigration. He works for the United Nations. And then you've got Twyford in Arms Control, Peni Hanari, another islander in charge of defence. They own the country. You've got you've got like 5 people there. 4 of them are from the islands. 1, 2, 4 people, 5, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 4 islanders running the courts of justice. The minister. You've got 4 islanders running Minister of Justice, Minister of Courts, Associate Minister of Justice, Minister of Immigration, and Minister of Defence and Minister of... You've got 4 islanders doing that are not born to New Zealand. Which country would do that? It's ridiculous. And then you've got Twyford, who works for the United Nations, also running immigration, bringing in all the refugees. You see, your country's, you're in a mess. Forget about the protests. You've got a lot more to worry about than what you think. I'm sorry to say, darlings, everybody. It's not my intention to hurt you, but these are the hard facts of where we are.
Where are all the constitutional lawyers? Why aren't they picking up on all these things?
Because they have been instructed to only use United Nations laws, and they only get paid using United Nations laws. And every single case that uses a United Nations laws gets a payout from the court. They are able to claim on it.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this is New Zealand. So when they put in if they put in a 1688, there's no payment, but they protect your country. but you're not going to get any payouts. So everybody wants payouts. And the only way to get payouts is to use United Nations laws. And even though if you see in the court you don't win, you see that you don't win, right? But the lawyer still gets paid. So that's why no lawyer will touch anything else. So let's move on. It's a very dire situation. Now you all might think to yourself, oh, in Australia we don't have to worry about this, and in England we don't have to worry about this. Let me tell you something. This is being done in your countries as well, but it's all being set up in New Zealand, and as it's getting done in New Zealand, it then goes into your country. It was actually already done in Canada. It's all been done in Canada, and now New Zealand is number 2, and then it's going to be Australia state by state. Ireland's going down, Scotland's going down, and England's going down. You're all going down if we don't all get together as the Commonwealth. So everybody's going down. Nobody needs to think that New Zealand is worse than anybody. The only difference is that New Zealand had that 1993 where they let the foreigners in, but Australia just recently, a couple of years ago, made a law that they weren't allowed in and threw them all out. But it can't have been made very strong because that bossy guy, no offense to the Muslims, but that bossy guy is a Muslim and he was not born to Australia and he's running for Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah,
the bossy guy.
Yeah, Italian?
No, he's Muslim. Came to Australia when he was 7 with his Muslim parents. It's not that I'm against Muslims. Hey, Muslims, I'm not against you. But we have to have some Muslim countries, some Jewish countries, and some Protestant countries. So we're all in the Protestant countries, so you can all protect your countries and let us protect our countries, and that's the way it goes. And everybody has to be happy with that, and it's just too bad. So next one. Now where are we up to? So these are all the reasons we got to the unqualified persons, and then they had excessive bail has been required of persons committed in criminal cases to elude the benefit of the laws made for the liberty of the subjects. Let me just read again. Excessive bail. All right, what this is saying is that, and we've got many evidences of this in New Zealand. Is everybody hot?
I'm sweating. Yeah. That's why I'm human. Maybe it's just because I'm here. Well, I'm not cold. Yeah, I'm sticky. Not too.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Everybody?
We're all having those moments.
Oh, look, are you cold? You've got your blanket.
Yeah.
They're all...
Cold, but sticky hot.
I'm always cold too. I never like the air conditioning. I'm always cold. I like the hot weather. Anyway, but I can continue the...
Cold. My thermostat doesn't work anymore.
The excessive bail is, what they're doing is that some people who are committing criminal cases are being permitted to pay fines and not get the punishment that all the commoner people have to get. So that is illegal. Yeah,
That's
and
keeping rich out of the rest of jails, I guess.
yeah, because you'll see it in many cases that the rich people
Like
have
Prince
been
Andrew.
committing crimes, eh?
Yep.
Natasha?
Like
Right.
Prince Andrew.
Dan Andrews?
Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
No.
Prince-
No. Not Prince. No, I wouldn't say that about Prince Andrew, because Prince Andrew, I don't know about that one for Prince Andrew, because I think that he's had a bit of a hard time, and I do think that there's an assault on our royal family, and I do think that part of the UN agenda is to bring down the royal family, which would remove our common law rights. And if you can watch them, they're picking them off one by one. They're really having a good go. Now that girl there, she was a 17-year-old hooker, for goodness sakes. There was no evidence. The only evidence is that she was standing there purportedly, and he had his arm there, and they both had a smile on her face. She was 17. She went there willingly, and she'd been, doing massaging and all of that for a long time. I don't think that a crime was committed there personally, but he was not convicted of any crime, was he? So she agreed to a payout, but they originally had offered a payout and he had said no. And in the end, he did. The Queen is old. If I was him, I probably would have done the same. So, no, I wouldn't say Prince Andrew is doing that at all.
He hasn't defended himself. There hasn't been any sort of major defence.
Well, I think it would have been very dangerous for him to go to America at this point in time when they're bringing down the royal family. So I think it was the wise thing to do, because he would have, had he have fought that case, he would have had to leave England and go to America. And I don't think that's safe for him right now. Not with what the United Nations is doing and trying to bring down the Westminster law and bring down the Commonwealth. They've picked off the royal family. They have demonised the royal family for many decades now. And part of it is they want rid of this Bill of Rights here, because it tells you how to get them out. The United Nations cannot come into our countries and establish their laws in our country as long as this stands, because of the supremacy law. And so they know they've got to get the Commonwealth brought down, and they know that they need to pick off that royal family. And I think that we all need to start uplifting our royal family, and everyone should have a picture of the Queen in their house. And we all have to realise that, why is the Majesty there? She's very hard for her. She's born to that. She doesn't choose that life. She's born to it. And her only duty is to sit there and hold our common law rights high above man-made laws. Because where are we going to go if we can't turn to the Queen's army? Where are we going to go? Answer me the question. What's the answer?
The Lord's spiritual, but
Well, the Lord's spiritual, no, because it's, well, you have to wait till I get down here, because you'll see here, it doesn't say the Lord's spiritual there, because it says here, so we'll keep going. So he was giving fines and punishments, and excessive fines have been imposed, and illegal and cruel punishments were inflicted. And so that is right there. Oh. And also he was giving several grants and promises made of fines and forfeitures before any conviction or judgment against the persons upon whom the same were to be levied. So he was forfeiting one person's property and giving it to another person without any conviction. And that's what they're doing with the Maori now. They're taking all your properties and giving it to the United Nations. So these things that I just read to you, they are all the things that the king did wrong and why he was removed. Okay? Now it's going to come down here where, who was it? Was it Janet is in the red? Was it Janet that said that we would go to the Lord spiritual?
Diane.
Who said that? Diane. Okay, Diane. Where's Diane? I can't see you, dear.
I'm hiding.
She went to where it was
All
cold.
right. All right. Is everybody bored? We're almost done now, and then we'll be done. All right. But we've got to get. You don't. Is everybody minding?
Yes,
We're still there.
yes.
Yep.
You still with me? You don't mind?
Yeah,
Still there,
I'm
yeah.
still with you.
No, still here. Keep going.
Okay.
I'm not looking at my sheet.
We're going to go down to your rights, and then we're going to stop and not do the Parliament thing. We're just going to do your rights.
Okay.
So it should be not too long. I'll try and make it quick. Right. So now I'm going to tell you. So all of those things that I just read to you were the reason why the king was removed. Okay? And so then, here it's saying, all which are utterly and directly contrary to the known laws and statutes and the freedom of this realm. And now here that they've said, and whereas the said late King James II having abdicated the government, and the throne being thereby vacant. So there was a vacant throne, and they threw him out. And then they brought in His Highness, the Prince of Orange, whom it pleased Almighty God to make the glorious instrument of delivering this kingdom from popery and arbitrary power. So they didn't say that the Lord Spiritual will get the power. They said that it's going to be only the majesties. So if the majesties are removed, then our common law rights, even though we will have them, it will be difficult for us to use them against the United Nations. Because they have to sit somewhere. These things have to sit. So the subordinate law sits on the Parliament, right? And it sits on the courts. So the constitutional law sits on the Queen, high above. But it has to sit somewhere. Everything has to sit somewhere. Because if it doesn't sit somewhere, it just will fall into the wind. Like your words will fall into the wind. So it sits on the Queen. So I did by the advice of... So in regards to Prince Andrew, it would be very dangerous for him to go to America. So I think he was kind of forced a bit to pay it off, and he didn't really have much choice, did he? So I think that, and the thing about our royal family, I'll tell you something. They are not allowed to speak. They gave up their right to speak so that we would be able to keep our right to speak. They gave up their forfeiture of person so that we could be protected from the forfeiture of our person. So they lost all of their rights so that we could have rights. And we damn well ought to all be grateful to them for all that they have sacrificed for us. Their lives are terrible. They're locked in those castles. They can't go anywhere. They can't talk to anybody. They can't do anything. And so they've just got to stay locked in their castles. They're not allowed to speak against the government. They're not even allowed to vote, for goodness sakes. They're not allowed to do anything except sit there and hold up our common law rights. We all should be very grateful for the wonderful sacrifices that our royal family have made for all of us. So, by the advice of Lord Spiritual and Temporal and divers principal persons of the Commons, caused letters to be written to Lord Spiritual and Temporal, being Protestants, and other letters. So they wrote letters to everybody, and they said, anybody that's going to govern, you all have to follow these rights. And they said, in Westminster upon 22nd of January in this year, 1688, in order to such an establishment that their religion, laws, and liberties might not again be in danger of being subverted, upon which letters all elections having accordingly been made. So if they follow all of these rules, their elections are all based on this. Look, you might not realise how important that those words there are. Upon which letters elections have been accordingly made. The only way that they are allowed to be in Parliament is if they are upholding these rights. And if they're not, they have to leave. And they all know that. Only you don't know that. These are the subjects' rights. Thereupon, Lord Spiritual and Temporal and Commons, pursuant to respective letters and elections, being now assembled in a full and free representative of this nation, taking into their most serious consideration the best means for attaining the ends aforesaid, do in the first place, as their ancestors in like case have usually done, for the vindicating and asserting their ancient rights and liberties do declare. So that means that in the past, our ancestors always had these natural rights, but we never had them on paper. And now we need them so that we can use them and go to the court. So then it goes on to say all of the things. No dispensing of power, that the pretended power of suspending laws or execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal. Now, we did vote in the Parliament, so we can't use them. But look at this one. The late dispensing is illegal. That the pretended power of dispensing with laws or the execution of laws by regal authority, as it has been assumed and exercised of late, is illegal. So this means this doesn't mention Parliament. It just says that making laws as they please in a regal manner, just writing laws every other day as they please. That is the legal. That gets the Parliament out. Next one. Ecclesiastical courts are illegal. That the Commission for electing the late Court of Commissioners for ecclesiastical causes and all other commissions and courts of the like nature are illegal and pernicious. Now, all these common law courts that they're setting up around the country, many of them run by the Jehovah's Witness Church and the Mormon Church and the Jewish churches and all of them, they're all ecclesiastical courts and they're all illegal.
Ah.
Yeah, they're all...
Does that mean also... Yeah, does that mean what they've done in... Is it Canada?
Yes.
It's the common law where they said it was backed by the Hague or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So they're all illegal.
I would go so far to say as the courts at the United Nations are illegal. Meaning that, and that's why they are non-binding laws and they're not legal in our countries. If they have a court ruling in the United Nations, they have to send that ruling to our Parliament. And it's our Parliament that decides to enforce it or not. But if when they bring in this 1990 Bill of Rights and this United Nations laws and try to put it into our courts, that is an ecclesiastical court and that's illegal, what they're doing, because they have to go through Parliament. So they're trying to get out of that. So that's, yes, all those ones in Canada, all illegal. Levying money, that I told you, levying money for the use of the Crown by pretence of prerogative without grant of Parliament for a longer time or in other manner than the same is or shall be granted as illegal, that I told you about that. We have, here is our right. When they break any of these laws, so giving our money to certain groups, when it's not used for the use of all the common people, so the money that you give is for everybody to use, and the minute that they give it to a specific group, then they're not allowing you to be part of that. That's illegal. But here we have the right to petition the king. And here what it says, all commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. So they cannot stop you, but you can't just go to the king. You've got to go to your common law court first. And if you, the common law court, that's why you see, we go to the Supreme Court outside of Parliament, and the Supreme Court puts Parliament into check. And if the Supreme Court doesn't, then we can go directly to the king, not even the Governor-General. And so, but you have to go through the process first. So you go to the Supreme Court first, you say, this is my right. And usually if it is your right and it's indubitable, he will give you the declaration. And then the next one, the standing army that I told you, that they're raising and subjects arms. Protestants may have arms for their defence, suitable for their conditions as allowed by law. Now, part of your arms are the laws that protect you. And when they bring in United Nations laws for too many liberties for the various religions and all of these refugees, and I'm not against refugees, but I'm just saying that they're getting a bit much. And, yeah, I think they are.
They were getting the houses too. They were putting them in houses before even the Maori.
Never mind the Maori, before New Zealand people.
Because it's good for the elections, isn't it?
Well, they've been bringing them in for votes, and I can prove that too. So that's been going in my court thing. So it says here, the freedom of election, the election of members of Parliament ought to be free. Freedom of speech. Now here, this is because they've got the no harm that you can't speak against them, but the freedom of speech and debates, it says here, freedom of speech or debates or proceedings in Parliament ought not to be impeached or questioned in any court or any place. So when they prosecute you for speaking against someone, that's illegal. They're not allowed to do that. So I can tell people that you're ugly and you're horrible if I want to. And if you take me to court, I'm going to go and get a declaration. I'm going to say what I want, block your ears and go away. And, you know, you don't have to like me. So it's just too bad. Excessive bail, and that's the no cruel and unusual punishments. And then you can have a jury. But that's been amended because you have to have, it has to be a serious case, not just a traffic fine. Grants of forfeitures, that's forfeiture of your person, locking you in your houses with no conviction, preventing you from going to your sports centres with no conviction, all of that, so those two. And then I'm not going to do parliaments today. So that is the right. So the we're not going to do the rest today because I think we've done enough. So we'll come back for the next one another time. So we're done with that. And then that's quite a lot today, isn't it?
Just off that subject, Kate, can I just ask something? I just really want to just question, you know, how we talked about the royal family, and I do see that, you know, the royal family has been demonised a lot, you know, and I can sort of understand why. But there's just one question that does raise, you know, a concern for me, and that is Prince Charles was at Davos with the World Economic Forum, And he very much is, you know, a promotion of the Great Reset. And he also talks about that we've got trillions and trillions of dollars to bring in the military. So, you know, like, I wonder, you know, the Queen has done and upheld the monarch for all that time. You know, she's done her royal duty, and she's making and paving the way for Prince Charles and you know, to be king with Queen Camilla.
Queen Camilla.
What if he didn't want to?
Hey?
And he's heading this. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, so
Because
I'll just put on my light. Hang on.
so, does he make some question there?
The way that they wrote these laws, because it is a forever document, but we haven't gotten down that far. But the way that, when we read it down the next time, the way that they wrote these laws, it gives us the means to remove even the Queen herself. And the problem is that, you see, we the people have not kept a check on our laws, and we have been deceived for 200 years because they've hidden it. And nobody has made any claims on these laws for many years. And so they're saying, well, we've got all these United Nations and we've put all these native people and they're all going to the court and using them. And look at this 1688 common law. Nobody's using it. So it's becoming weaker and weaker. And, and so we've all got to start using it. And none of us have known, including myself, that the mechanism for removing Parliament is in here, in this common law. That's where it is. And so since we haven't known that, the people have been deceived into believing that the way to remove Parliament is by going and having a protest. But it isn't. Sometimes you'll get them out and sometimes you won't. Usually you end up with a dictatorship. But we are in the Commonwealth. And in the Commonwealth, we were given a mechanism to remove Parliament as long as we can show good reason why. And so many countries do not have this option. So they do have to go and protest. They do have to go and break windows, but we don't have to do that. And so our laws have become quite dormant, but let's remember this. Prince Charles and the royal family, including the Queen, have had almost all of their powers stripped from them. They're no longer getting paid. Nobody wants to pay to upkeep their castles. Where do you want them to live? In a state house down the street. They've got to live in castles. A queen lives in the castle. Don't you know that? Well, the castles are expensive and they need to be paid for. And the Commonwealth don't want to pay. She has a Queen's army. When our army goes rogue, as they have, who are you going to call? Not the fucking Ghostbusters, are you? You're going to call... You're not. You're going to have to call the Queen's army. But we in the Commonwealth have not paid any money towards the Queen's army, and they have deteriorated and become nothing more than a ceremonial activity. Now, we have not we have been complacent, and we have not realised how important the Queen's army is to us, and we're only going to be realising now how much we need them, because in this situation, you know what? We wouldn't be calling in the UN. We'd be calling in the Queen's army, and they would be over here in New Zealand as they were in 1840. Now, in 1840, the Queen's army came to New Zealand and Australia because the New Zealand natives called the Queen's Army in. John Dunmore Lang called in the Queen's Army, and he said, there are missionaries here and natives here that are chopping off our heads and burning us alive and doing all these things to us. And the Queen said, those are my subjects, and I have my duty to care for my subjects. And she sent the Queen's Army over here, and she fixed it all up for everybody. And everybody was fine up until 1975, when the New Zealand Maori tried to remove the Queen. And that's where all our problems started. From 1975, the whole world has gone to hell because they've tried to remove the Queen, God's Queen. Now, you must all take responsibility. We all must. How horrible that we've been. Now, the poor old Queen has to get voted in. Our Queen must be voted in every 2 years. Now, that is ridiculous. A Queen doesn't get voted in. And she is, I mean, they're not getting paid anymore. I don't even know why they would want to be a royal family. Why would they want to be? Look at what they have to give up, how hard their lives are. Now, everybody just stop and think about that. So,
Charles has been paid, maybe.
What's that?
I'm saying, do you think Prince Charles is therefore sort of being paid off? Or?
Well, it really doesn't matter if Prince Charles is paid off or not, does it? Because you all are going to have to decide if you want to keep this Bill of Rights or not. And if you don't keep it, you're going to be going under United Nations laws. There's no two ways about that.
I just find it, in practice, if we haven't got the lawyers backing for anything, doing this going forward, it really comes down to the individual. And how many individuals do really understand this? There's not many.
Well, there's
so how
me.
Are we going to,
there's only me.
How are we going to, how are we going to push it, though, to get it?
Well, we've got this group here, and then I've got Natasha here from Australia. And the more we start, and then all we have to do is get 1 or 2 cases in the court. And the minute that we have that, everyone will follow. They will. So we just need to get a case into the court so that we can show people how to do this. And we don't even know ourselves because it's not been done in so many years. So we've all got to... Now, there's a lot of people involved with this common law bullshit, but those people should, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Those people are some of the most cleverest people alive, way more than me. If you get them into doing this and studying this, they will just take off and they will do it because they know all this stuff already, but they've only been doing it in the wrong. They think that you can just go to the Governor-General and give them a declaration written by them. But once they figure out that all they've got to do is go to the common law court, get the declaration from the judge, and then present it to the police to stand down, they are all going to follow. The whole thing is just going to balloon into a beautiful symphony of blossoms all around the Commonwealth.
Butterflies.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. So
There you go.
we are the pioneers. We are the pioneers.
Yeah, we are pioneers, we believe.
And I will tell you something. Poor Prince Charles, you see, the royal family are not allowed to speak. Did you know that? They're not allowed to interfere with Parliament. And the Supreme Court is not allowed to interfere with Parliament. And the Attorney General is not allowed to interfere with the will of the people. That's why none of them are saying anything. Because they're not allowed to, because it is interfering with the will of the people from God's natural law. Yes, so they're not allowed to. So they're all waiting for us to go to the court and say, hey,
Yeah.
they're not upholding our natural law. Help us. And the court will help you. They will.
Yeah. Why does Karen Burr keep talking about going and standing outside the Governor General's
Controlling
house?
position.
Like, why? She just, that's her only way. She said it's the only thing that's going to help us.
Many of them, they know that there's a common law. They know that there is an ancient natural law, but what they don't know is that it's on paper and it has a process for us to do to get that common law protected. Do you understand? So she's not really wrong, but where is she wrong is that when you voted in the parliament, right? So that is the will of the people. So when you've got 4 million people that voted in parliament and you've got 200 people standing at the Governor General's office with a handwritten letter saying, I order you to leave. No, you've got to collect your evidence. And then, and there's so much evidence. There's so much. I've found you've only got to Google half these people and they've committed crimes. Chris Farfoy committed crimes in the immigration. Golritz Garaman committed human trafficking crime when she brought in Burut Buchoni against the law. They human trafficked him around 11 countries back to New Zealand. She met him at the airport and flew him to Christchurch, and they gave him a job on the Christchurch, in the Christchurch University. There's a crime there. There are many, but
So when you said you had found all this evidence and had printed it off, is that what you did? Did you just Google them? Is that what you were referring to when you said you had a whole lot of...
I wasn't meant to be where I am. I wanted to do comedy. And so I did.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I was doing comedy. And I was on my show doing my comedy, and then I was seeing these politicians that were coming up, and I just Googled them, and then I just followed this trail of corruption that was just going back year after year after year, just corrupt. And as I started piecing it all together and I was abusing them all, I wanted to know why, and I just kept going back, and why did they do this, and why did they do that, and how did they change that law, how did they remove the Constitution, and then I became a researcher, and so everybody was watching my research, but I didn't have enough knowledge I only knew that something was wrong, and then, as you see now, I have evolved into a citizen lawyer, and now I'm doing the legal things far from comedy. And so all that stuff that I researched during my comedian years has now become valuable evidence.
Wow.
To put...
From court jester to citizen lawyer.
It's very funny. So now I'm printing. So, of course, all of you won't know this, but if you saw my older videos, you would see I did do some videos on the corrupt Ardurns, and I did do some videos on some the corrupt politicians in Australia, and I did do some videos on all the corrupt Chinese that were all through our New Zealand Parliament, coming out of the Australian universities, by the way. And so I've done all those videos, but it would take you hours to watch them. So I can't ask you to do that, and there isn't really any time. So I've got the knowledge, but so I'm trying to, now I'm at the point now where I'm collecting evidence, and I'm not the only one. I have an investigator that helps me investigate. So if I want to know someone, I just send my good friend, I'm not allowed to mention names, but I send to her, and she goes and she has gotten so much information. She had been researching for many, many, many years, but she didn't know what to do with the information. And Karen Brewer would be in that category. She has researched for many, many years, but she just doesn't quite know what to do with her information. But I think although she doesn't uphold the Queen, I don't think she quite realises why the Queen is there and why we need to keep a royal family there. But I think when she does, she will find it very helpful to prosecute the things that she wants to prosecute. So it's not all those common law people. Because some people have abused me because they've said, "Oh, geez, Kate Floss, we've been doing this for 20 years and you've just bowled on in here after 20 years and said, I'm Kate Floss and I know what to do." And throwing this thing in their face, and some of them are very hurt about it, and I'm sorry, but I have had to teach. I've been teaching here for 30 years, and that's where I learned how to piece it all together and put it all into order. And so I've learned that through my teaching over 30 years. So I have not been sitting here idly for 30 years either. So when I was doing my teaching, they would send me kids in grade 5 that had only a grade 1 reading level. And the parents would say to me, I want you to teach this kid at this grade 5 so he can pass his grade 5 test. And I would say to him, no, I can't. I've got to teach him grade 1 first, and then grade 2, and then grade 3. But it only takes a few months. So then I would go right back to the ABCs and then teach grade 1, 2, 3, up to 5. And then when we got to 5, it was smooth sailing. Well, I did the same here. I looked at what the common laws were doing, and Karen Brewer, I used to watch her religiously. And and then I decided to go right back to where they all said Magna Carta. So I went back to pre-Magna Carta to find out what was going on. And then I wanted to know what happened in England, what happened in Australia, what happened in America, and I went to every country and looked at everything and have pieced it all. And then I could figure out from 1970, well, actually it goes further back where they started at it goes further than 1960 was, 19 in the 40s or something, they set up Israel and Palestine, and it all started there. And then in 1960, they changed the criteria to be Indigenous. You used to have to be 100% to be able to claim Indigenous status. And then they changed the law that you could be 50%. When they changed it to be 50%, and then they brought in many of their religious people and bred them all through our populations. But the New Zealand Maori, they couldn't do that because they were already 50%. In 1975, they changed theirs to be anyone that identifies as a Maori is a Maori. And so then they bred in thousands of people through them, and then they changed all the laws. So that's the only difference, is that I went to find out why you are in this situation. So this is where we are. And we need the prince. Oh, I was telling you about the prince. Now he's not allowed to speak. And he, for the first time a couple of years ago, they called him Spider-Man. He, for the first time, wrote a letter of complaint about in England. Now, I haven't got it here, so I have to speak off the top of my head, so don't quote me, and it's just a Kate Floss conspiracy. But he wrote to the Parliament complaining that they were removing all of their historical monuments, that they were importing thousands of people that were not of subject status into the country, and that they were changing all the street names and changing all of the landscape of England is being changed. And he wrote a letter to Parliament, and he should have been thrown out. They were trying to get him, I think, even get him thrown out for doing it because it was so bad for him to do it. And I think he's just given up. He's just given up on us because we've given up on them. And we have not protected them as we're supposed to. So he's just given up. How do you think there are only like 4 people now fighting against the United Nations all by themselves, and none of us are standing up for them? Well, how would you like to be in that position? They're just being bullied and bullied and bullied and bullied, and we better stop it. I'm not angry at you, but I'm just saying to all the Commonwealth, if we don't stop and we don't put a picture of the Majesty in our house, I'm saying to all of you, put a picture of the Majesty in your house and put up a picture of your common law right in your house and start using what has been given to you, because if you don't, it's use it or lose it, and you'll all go under the United Nations. Is that what you want? No. So, is there any questions? I think that's it.
I think that's it.
So what happens when she dies?
It's King Charles, isn't it?
Well, we have to fix the damage that we ourselves have caused. We have caused this. Hey?
What if Charlie decides he wants to go under the UN?
Pardon?
What if Charlie decides he wants to go under the UN?
When we do the next session, if you all want to come for the next session, it tells you in there what you're to do if the royal family do not uphold our rights, because he's not allowed to. So it tells you how to remove him, and we will replace him as a Commonwealth. We are 16 countries. We're not one country. We are 16 countries in the Commonwealth, right?
Yeah.
And there are some states in America that are still in the Commonwealth. And all of us have got to start. First thing that we need to do is get our New Zealand government under control a little bit through the courts. That's our first point of order. But after that, we try and get an injunction on them to stop them making arbitrary laws. That's what we should do first. Get an injunction to stop the arbitrary laws, and then we have to write to the head of we have to write to our court and the head of the Commonwealth and start calling in our Royal Majesty and calling in against all these United Nations laws. Now, the United Nations are permitted to have a few laws in our country, but not what they're doing now, and not to the point where they remove our Protestant right and put us under the Noahide laws. So then we've got to go, there's a whole Commonwealth committee that we're not using. There's a whole Commonwealth institution that we are not even using. They're just sat there doing nothing because nobody's calling them.
Who are
So
they?
who is the umbrella of that?
Hey?
Who is the umbrella of that? Like, where does that sit? Who is it? Who's on this
Well, my
Commonwealth?
secret friend, who is a New Zealand Maori chief, has been writing to the Commonwealth by himself for decades, trying to stop all of this. And he can't expose himself because he'll be killed. and he has had death threats, so we can't expose him, but he knows how to do all this, and he's quite old, and I can send stuff to him, and he will do it, and I'm learning. So I think we can even just, I mean, you know, we all got to start working because you've all got children, right? Do you want your children to be safe, right? So you've all got to stop what you're doing and think about your kids, because we're all old and we're all going to be dead, but they're not going to be, and we've left them with a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So we have to all stop what we're doing and get on our Google now.
I was just thinking today about all these elderly people who think that how are they allowing their grandchildren to be injected to save them? Like, gosh, aren't they thinking that?
Now you see here there are Commonwealth courts. So you do it to the Commonwealth. We would do it to the Commonwealth of Australia. And you can petition to the Parliament of Australia. I think what you have to do is just I think you just have to petition the British. Right, what you've got to do is what they say. I'll have to ask my friend, actually. He knows more than me, actually. Yeah, I finally found you've asked me a question that I don't know.
The Court of Australia, Commonwealth Court portals.
Well, I think the process is you have to, no, you can't just petition them. You've got to go through our common law courts first. And then that goes to the Supreme Court. And if we fail, he will give our reasons why we fail. And then if we disagree, we can appeal to the King's Bench in the UK. But all of that goes, so when it goes to the Supreme Court in New Zealand, it automatically goes to the Commonwealth, because that all comes under Commonwealth law. So all people in the Commonwealth.
I thought there was 4 countries under the Commonwealth. Is there only now 16?
There used to be, well, this is what I'm saying to you, there used to be 54 countries, and they have been picking all the small countries off piece by piece. And now we're down to 16. And the countries that they really want to pick off are the English-speaking countries now. They've decided that they're going to bring all the refugees into our countries. Now, I'm not against the refugees, but in limited numbers, not to the point where it's disrupting the life of the people already living there. So, but they're flooding our countries with people that are not of subject status, so that the United Nations can say a majority of the people are not subject status, so therefore they should have United Nations laws and not subject to common law. So that's why they're doing that. So, but we could prevent all of that. What do you think about that, Sadhana?
Sorry, about what was the last thing you said?
I was saying about the situation with refugees. Do you feel angry at me? No.
Not at all. I can see how, they've played it all out and, planned it all. And I mean, I always feel sorry for refugees anyway. Like, if you look back to why they've left, do you think they really like it, that they've had to leave their countries?
Well, it's like the woman that picks up 2 cats. She goes and picks up 2 cats and gives them a home because they don't have a home, right? She takes care of them and she feeds them, and the 2 cats are having very nice and prosperous lives. But then she keeps going out and people keep bringing her more cats and more cats. And before you know it, she's got 100 cats and she can't take care of them. And then she ends up with a disaster where the cats are starving and she can't feed them and she can't feed herself and she can't do it. Well, that's irresponsible. Because this is a humanitarian disaster that's on the way here. And it is. We cannot manage this many people. And also I'm saying that the United Nations should be pressuring those countries to give these rights, to stop doing that to their people. So why aren't those, why New Zealand is a very small country. And if you've got countries where they're having 5 kids or 10 kids to one family, and then saying that it's everybody else's responsibility to take care of them, well, no, I disagree. If somebody, those people should be taught not to have 10 children that they can't take care of. And so it's like, I think that
I think it's also planned out, you know, it's like you're creating, you know, you create war in these countries and create these climate problems in the countries, which means the refugees then have to move, people move.
Well, they should all be moved to countries that are appropriate to their cultures. So there are many Islamic countries, and if they're Islamic people, then they should go to Islamic countries. And if they're Protestant people, then they should go to Protestant countries, because it really isn't right. And I mean, I realise that there are these wars, and I'm blaming America for that, and I'm just going to outright say that they are warmongers. They've caused all these wars. And, I mean, they went now, Iraq was...
I think it's designed that way, you know, like for them, like I said, to come here. I look at all the protesters and you don't see any sort of migrants or refugees, you know, protesting against the government because they're being very compliant, they're keeping quiet, and maybe that's all part of it. And it's, like...
It is, to take away the rights of the sovereign people down here, because there was I think there was a survey done for protesters at Parliament, and 64% of them were middle-aged women, 40 to 50 something kind of thing. And that was 64%. So and they were white European.
No Indians, no Chinese,
No, well, I've researched this, and before this occurred now, because I was researching 2 years ago, and every single Saturday at Aotea Square, there was a protest by the Iranians or by the Indians or by the Chinese or by the migrant workers, by the islanders. There were protests every single week. And they have flooded Parliament with petitions. Go and have a look. There are dozens of petitions from migrants. And so we used to get maybe one petition a year or a couple of petitions a year, but now the whole thing is flooded. There are bills being passed every day, hundreds of laws coming in for the migrants. So no, I think that they have all ganged up. And I just saying to you that I've got the evidence right here of migrant groups that have been telephoning each other, 13,000 islanders, 17,000 Africans have teamed up, and they all vote for one person that is only the person of their race. Now that's manipulating elections. And so all the ethnic people have grouped up, they demanded a ministry, and what I'm just saying is that I'm over here and I'm looking around at India, and I'm looking around at China, and I'm looking around at Saudi Arabia, and I went and read Saudi Arabia's constitution, and they say Islamic law, and then there's the Islamic laws, and then they've got human rights permitted if it's not against our Islamic law. And then they've got human rights is permitted here if it doesn't interfere with our Islamic law. So they have got those, but there are very heavy restrictions. No foreigners are allowed in their parliaments. No, foreigners are not permitted to protest in other countries. All the foreigners in our country are going against the Anglo people. They vote against us. We cannot win against them. They have placed immigrants strategically in every single town throughout New Zealand that will all vote the way that they're told to. So we can't be saying that they're not making trouble, because they are. And the original criteria for the refugees was that they would come to our country, and then after things settled down in their own country, they would be repatriated. And I think that's the correct thing to do. So some of those countries were war-torn. And I think it would be better for all of us if we... Well, the problem was that none of the countries were contributing to the refugees, the war-torn countries, right? And so that the guy Guterres or something at the UN, he said, rather than send money to those countries, why don't we pick up large groups of those people, bring them to the Anglo countries, the Commonwealth countries, where they all get benefits, and then they can all get their salaries and send half their salary home. And so that's all recorded, the money that they send home. They have to send it. And so that was their solution to fix the crisis. But we can blame America for a few of the wars. But many of those countries are not at war, and they're warring amongst themselves. And many of the ones that are warring amongst themselves are the ones that had the Majesty and the Commonwealth, and they removed the Majesty and they removed the Commonwealth, and they all started fighting against each other from their tribes. So our Commonwealth is, it's good to have for some people to come, but we can't take them all, because you're going to end up with... I'm over here in Asia, and I tell you something, they're all driving around in Mercedes-Benzes. There are so many BMWs in this country, you can't even walk out my front gate without seeing a BMW driving past. They've got... In India is the same. They don't share their money with their poor people. And that is a fact. All of these countries have no benefit system, and everybody has to earn their own money. And if somebody can't earn money, well, that's just too bad for them. And then they've got the audacity to scoop up all these people. They're scooping up all of the HIV positive people because they can't get medication in their country, so they're scooping them up and bringing them to New Zealand. They're bringing in all their TB cases. That's what this Health Act is about, the TB. So this is an assault on our nation, and it's time we stood up and said no, because they have overstepped what they should have been getting. What they were getting was a limited amount, and they've just want more and more and more and more. And we cannot sustain it any longer. And what have we lost because of this? What have we lost so far? We in New Zealand used to be able to travel to Australia without a passport. And we used to have share. We could go there and live there, or live in New Zealand, or go there because all our families are there. We're not allowed to do that anymore. We used to be able to leave New Zealand and go to Australia and live there, and if we had no job, get a benefit over there. We're not allowed to do that anymore. In Australia, you used to be able to get a benefit, an old age pension, whether you had worked or not. Now you have to work for 35 years and pay taxes for 35 years, or you're not able to get a benefit. It's all that has changed. In New Zealand, our benefit the age has been raised 5 years, right? And they're saying that with the 5 million, the extra 2 million immigrants and refugees, that the old age pension is going to be removed because they can no longer sustain it. So they're going to put everybody on the universal pay of the same salary. So it isn't fair. And let me tell you something. Now they want equal pay. Now, when they brought in, see, I'm working in Thailand, and the teacher's salary, we used to get triple the salary of the Thai teachers. And then when the United Nations screened equal pay, our Anglo people, our salaries dropped down to the same pay as the Thai teachers, right? That was, you don't know the money, but that was 40,000 baht a month. Now 40,000 baht a month is about $1,500 a month, right? So if we work here and we have to go back home to our country, we're going to go home with nothing. We have to pay for airfares. We have to pay for calls to our family. We have to eat Western food, and nobody can sustain it. And yet, when a Thai person goes to New Zealand and they get equal salary, they're able to send half their salary back to Thailand and buy land and buy houses and buy all these things because they're getting equal salary. Well, that isn't fair. And because so many immigrants were brought into New Zealand, they got less pay at the hospitals and at the schools and at the government workplaces. So they reduced the salary, and all the Anglo people left because they could not sustain themselves. And now all those jobs have gone to people that are not New Zealanders. No, this isn't the right thing to do. You don't take one destroyed country and destroy another country. No, that's not right. I don't think.
Health system. Chinese bring all their family here to use our health system. That's the first thing they get on, is our benefit health system.
Yes.
And rape it, basically.
And I'm not being rude or anything, but when I come here, because I just base it on all the laws that are over here. So I'm just looking at what's going on over here. And I'm thinking that New Zealand people and Australian people, especially New Zealand people, are being taken advantage of because they have dumbed down all of our education. Well, I'm here in Thailand. I'm not allowed to bring my mother here. I'm not allowed to bring my father here. I'm not allowed to bring my family here. My visa gets one. And then, but the ones that are coming in, they just said family visa. Cousins, uncles, aunties, grandparents, all of that are coming. And we can't afford it. And we used to have the best health system in the world, and now we have the worst health system in the world. You should see the health system over here in Thailand. It is second to none. You can't even, you look at Dubai, my gosh, have you seen that place? That place is, eh?
I lived there.
Eh?
I said I lived there for 9 years.
In Dubai, And what do you think about it there?
What did I think about that?
Yeah, what about the standard of living? I'm talking about the standard of living, the healthcare, the shopping malls, the cars, all of that. They've got everything, right?
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
You know, because not like New Zealand, is it?
No. I mean, I was listening to you, I was listening to all the things you were saying, and I was sort of thinking about Dubai in that sense, like, yeah, I mean, the disparity in wealth, because you've got all the sort of construction workers and then you've got some immense amount of wealth there as well. Yeah, but it's all just all kind of superficial, really.
Well, it's not, but they've got so much, and they're dumping too much on our countries, and to the point now that they want to remove our common law that we have had. My ancestors fought for 400 years to get the Protestant protections, and they presently want to remove it. And
you have to wonder, like you say, I mean, maybe this has all just been planned since the 1970s. I mean, they brought all the Pacific Islanders in to work in the factories, and then the coup happened in Fiji in 1985. All the Indians came from Fiji, and so all these things happened, and maybe it's a much bigger plan that we don't realise. And I think everyone's being used.
yes,
I don't think, everyone's being used, and New Zealand is this example, meant to be the example, right? Isn't it? It's meant to be the case study or whatever. She's meant to lead the way, and maybe.
I'm just going to be honest, because I think it's America. I think it always was since 1700. When the common law was created in 1688, the Quakers in America opposed it. The Quakers and the Jews. Sorry, Jewish people, because I don't know how to say a nicer word. What do you call them? I can only call them Jews, but the Quakers and the Jews and the Catholics, and not the Islamists, but I dare say that I don't quite know where they are in history there. But the Catholics and the Jews and the Quakers opposed it because it took away all of their privileges and everything. And they had ruled under absolute rule. So they separated in around about 1789. And then they went out to America and all of our countries, India too, because India's a Commonwealth country. And but America, those Quakers and those Catholics and all of those, the Irish Catholics, they threw Britain out. And they have been attempting to get the royal family out ever since. They tried to kill Queen Victoria 5 times to get rid of the royal family. They've always been trying to get rid of the royal family since the year 1200. They have all, because the royal family was always appointed by the church. And when the royal family said, well, no, we want to, and the people too said, no, we don't want to be governed under the ecclesiastical rule anymore. This battle has always been going on throughout time. And it just looks like they're winning. And so like you say, all of this is, the people that are coming, all the immigrants and all that, they're all just innocent. They're just pawns in the game. It's not their fault.
Exactly. I think they are. I think that they don't realise. I mean, they do sort of come in bloodshot the system.
No, but you would if you're poor.
And like you said, they're bringing this universal pace, and maybe we've been setting things up with our dole, and like we're kind of paving the way, aren't we, how they want the rest of the world to look like.
No, because when they tried to do this in 1835 and it was stopped. That's what happened in New Zealand. It was stopped. Yes, all those missionaries and all those religious leaders went into the islands and America and Canada and New Zealand and Australia and India. They all went there. They tried to get into China, and China threw them out and locked up their country for 100 years. As you know, they had communist China. That's why they locked it up, to keep all the religions out. That's what happened. So, but in 1835, when they realised that what was happening, they stopped it all. There was a new world order. There have been many attempts to create a new world order, a world order, and there have been many attempts to stop them. And we are just at a moment in time where we have to stop them again.
Yeah.
So they did do it, but
Demonic one though. Seems like a demonic world order this time round.
A monarchs.
Demonic. Yeah.
No, well, if you go and look at the blood libel, the pre-1688, they were kidnapping children and draining their blood, and many satanic rituals and abuses, and that all came from the ecclesiastical courts, and that's why they were outlawed. They used to have the pyramid, and they would sit their ass on the pyramid, and then put weights on their legs, and the body would just split. All of their cruel punishments involved the genitals. They used to put women. Where's your daughter? They used to put women into the we're just going to have to learn sometime. They used to put women into the dungeon, and with no underpants on, and put chains on her legs open, and let the rats eat her down below. All of these things were occurring pre-1688. They was all satanic in nature all through the years, for thousands of years. And most of it involved, a lot of it involved children. I won't say any other nasty things, but a lot of it involved children. When they came to New Zealand, and in Australia, they were, decapitating people and whipping people, and they did all this to the white people. You see, all this was done to the white man first. The black man didn't get nothing what the white man got. It was the white man got it all first, and we got it all worse than anyone. And then when we did the 1688, that was all stopped, and then they turned tail and did it to the black man. That's what happened. So, but it's not that I want to be rude or anything, but how do you say it? Well, I don't know how to say it. The darker people have never put these restrictions on their kings and queens and parliamentarians. So why don't they? Sardinia.
No, what do you mean?
Well, why don't like, you know?
For example,
Well, the Maori king. Let's look at the Maori king. He's an absolute king. He's got no restrictions. There's no constitution stopping him from doing whatever he wants to do. He does anything he wants. And the only thing that restricts him is the white queen. But if he gets her out, you've got an absolute king there with no restrictions. Why don't the New Zealand Maori? Because all the New Zealand Maori say, we don't accept him as the king. And yet, He has the kingly seal and he makes decisions for them and puts his seal on it. And they want to throw out the Queen and leave themselves with an absolute king. Well, look at the same as in India. You've got, you don't have your correct, I don't know about India. Some places I can't talk about, but most of the Asian countries all are led by generational leaders, aren't they? And nobody's ever stood up against them. Well, the Anglo people had to fight to get what they wanted, didn't they?
They've got, like, I'm thinking of the UAE, like in Dubai, for example. So
Yeah.
they've got rulers there. But then they have laws in place so that you can't speak against them and you can't do this and you can't, that do protect them.
And do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's a good thing because, yeah, I mean, I don't feel like it's a good thing because...
So why would you want that to come to New Zealand? Where they're going to run to if we destroy it in New Zealand? Where they're going to run to? There isn't going to be anywhere. The only place that they had available to run to was the Commonwealth countries. And why is it good for them to run to the Commonwealth countries? Only because we had the Majesty's imperial law. And so once you take away our Majesty's imperial law, then where they're going to run to, there isn't going to be anywhere. So that's why even all the refugees, all the Muslims, all the Jewish, they all should protect this and protect these countries so that if they just flood it, it's not going to be available for future generations that want to leave those countries, is it? So then that's exactly right. But why doesn't the UN? But why doesn't the UN push? Why doesn't the UN have a go at those countries? Why are they attacking our countries? Why can't if maybe the people can't speak, but why can't the United Nations? Why can't the United Nations say to the UAE, look, right, you don't do these things, give them these rights, we're going to all put sanctions on you. Why don't they do that? Rather than say, oh, we're going to scoop up all your HIV people because you've got the death penalty and we're going to dump them in New Zealand. Why doesn't the UN say to them, you know what, if you don't provide medical treatment for these, then we're not going to give you XXX. Why don't they do that? They've got a whole United Nations. 200, I think it's the wrong way that they've got. Am I right or am I right?
Because it's eroding all the laws in other countries, isn't it? They've already got those countries under control. As you say, they have to bow down to the king or whoever in the UAE, isn't it? It's like that. That's already, you know.
And I don't think that's a good example though, because I think in the UAE you've got like 70%, 80% expats who don't really have many rights. They're just there to work on their visas, and then basically they don't have any sort of.
But what about the people that have
So
actually
the people who live there, so
you know?
But I don't think, like, we don't have many sort of Emiratis in New Zealand. So
No, and we're just using them as an example. I'm just using them, I'm just saying that New Zealand's such a small country, and why is there so much pressure on New Zealand? I think New Zealand has been very kind. They've been too kind, and their own country is falling to pieces because of it. And I think...
That goes back to my point. Are they being kind, or is this part of the plan? Is this more of a global plan?
Well,
to
yes.
Get to where,
yes, it is. But yeah.
I think it was her way, or the government's way of getting support. You know, getting people behind them who don't have many rights. They come here to New Zealand.
So that's the automatic vote.
Yeah, it's like this compliance thing, which is what I was saying, is that they'll be here, they'll use the system or whatever, but they'll do what they're told.
Yes. Well, that's exactly, because we have, we do have migrants that are not mass migrants, just people that are just moving around the world. There should be a natural movement of people. There's nothing wrong with that, but with some restrictions. But we do have migrants that just come and see, like in England, because in England they have, there's many Indians and Pakistani, but they're all subjects and they're all happy to live under subject status and they intermingle very well. But when you're bringing so many people with so many different values in, then it doesn't intermingle well. But yes, it is part of the plan because it's the Mormon church. The Latter-day Saint Church from Utah has divided up the world into 10 chorus. And the Mormon church wants every country to be Mormon countries. They bring in as many Mormons as they can because they get their 10%, they get their 10% tithing. So for Pacific Islanders to get a visa to New Zealand, when they make their visa application, they have to get a letter from their pastor, and the letter has to say that they have been a good Mormon. And being a good Mormon means that they have to pay 10% of their salary into the church. Mm-hmm. Yes, so they bring them all to New Zealand, right? And then they're guaranteed a job and they're guaranteed a house, and then they're guaranteed to pay 10% of their salary forever into the Mormon church, which gets them their visa. So there's a scam, there's a really big scam going on here, and I'm just wondering, because I just noticed that Abraham Omar from Eritrea, he came from a church in Eritrea, and he was in Parliament maybe a couple of months, and they reckon that church got bombed. It was probably a tin shack to begin with. And then $1.5 million got sent over to the Eritrean church that apparently got bombed. And, so, he had telephoned on the couple of days before election, he had announced that he had telephoned 17,000 people from his refugee organisation, the African refugee or whatever. 17,000 people he had called to vote for Labour. And then he gets 1.5 million sent over to Eritrea. And
Yeah.
That's so fraudulent.
I know, that's what I mean. I think that's, it's part of that. I don't know, it just seems like a really well thought out plan that's been going on for quite, maybe since the 70s.
Well, you've got Jacinda Ardern heading up New Zealand. You've got Ross Ardern heading up Tokelau in Niue. You've got Ian Ardern heading up Samoa, and you've got Vincent Halleck, who is her uncle, heading up the American Samoa, and then you've got the Nathan Natrell heading up the healthcare that is all through New Zealand, the corporation that he started in the year 2000. Then you've got Alpito Williams-Seo, who is the Samoan king. He's a Mormon over here running immigration in the courts and the courts in New Zealand. And then, so they've got a whole thing going on here. Then you've got Dan Andrews, he's a Catholic. And then you've got, it seems to me that all the leaders are belonging to the church that require tithes. Tithes. Tithe, where you pay 10%. And I think there's a visa racket going on here, where they're bringing people from India or Eritrea, and they have to belong to a certain church that pays 10% of their salary into the church. I think that's what's going on. And then the church gets their 10% and they're paying off our leaders to continue the scam. The whole thing's a big scam.
I mean, the whole migration and refugee, it's so controlled as well, isn't it? I mean, it's not a free-flowing thing. It's all designed accordingly, you know, like according to whatever's going on
To
in that
break down the
country.
sovereignty of that country.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes.
Sorry, Pacific Islanders, I think, gosh, why would you want to leave your beautiful country? If we really cared about them, why wouldn't we, you know, have looked after them in their own country? What have they gained from coming here?
The criteria to come to New Zealand was that you have to speak the English language, and you had to swear allegiance to the Queen. But they no longer want to speak English, and they longer want to swear allegiance. But at least if they spoke English, because I was talking about this to Diane in another video, when you know that whenever you want to enter a country to live there to get your citizenship, part of the citizenship is that you have to be able to speak that country's language. And the reason why that is because once you can speak the language, you are able to be placed under their laws. If you can't speak their language, you're not able to be placed under their laws because you can't read them. So the
reading and writing.
Yeah.
What you said earlier about the reading and writing.
Exactly. So the criteria to come was that they spoke English, and so you had a majority of people that were immigrating that could speak English, therefore they could follow our laws, right? And they swore allegiance to the Queen, therefore that was our 1688 common law, that they agreed that they would not do anything cruel to us, that they would allow us to have our free speech, that we could say anything we want to say, and then that would not be hurtful to them, that they would just get over it. So when they swore that allegiance, that they said they would follow all of these things. And the only thing that I don't agree with is the equal pay, because why were we bringing them here? We were bringing them here because they were cheaper labour. And I think that it's fair because the money system is very different. Like the money in New Zealand, even $100 of your money, New Zealand money, sent back to these countries can buy them $100 of your money.
Still got to live here. Yeah, they've still got to live here, though, don't they?
Well, they live in large groups. They live in big families. So you see, in our culture, we usually live in one house for one family. But in their culture, they live 3 families to a house, and they live on rice and boiled up food. So their cooking activities are extremely, extremely economical. They know how to make all the sauces and all the curries and all the soups. And so, but we live differently because our bodies live on, and they have a lot of chilies that they can put on their rice. You can practically have a meal here for, it's 10 baht for a bag of rice, which is about 10 cents. And then you get a bit of a chili soup. They have like a chili soup. By the time you scoop that onto your rice and eat it up, you're all nice and full. It's cost you like 20 cents to have something to eat. And they cook a big pot for the whole family. Was what we have our food plate by plate, don't we? And then we have lamb chops and potatoes and celery, silver beets, stuff like that. So they can live on half what we live on, and they're very happy to live 20 people to a house. Actually, they're quite happy. So they all share the rent together. The grandparents stay home and take care of the kids, and the younger ones go out to work, whereas our grandparents say, bugger off, I don't want to take care of the grandkids. I'll just only have them for one day and then you take them back. And so I think that we cannot equate them to being in it. And so then it becomes unequal, doesn't it? if they get
And the
that.
standard is reduced, isn't it, because they're getting equal pay, they're coming out, they're actually benefiting and getting more. But the person, the sovereign of the country, as you say, we've got a Western diet, it's a lot more expensive, we've got housing, we've got all these things to pay, but it's undermining the actual system itself, the employment system and all those kinds of things, because they bring in that cheap labour.
What's the time over there? Do you have to go?
Okay, we go. Jodie's gone. Jodie's gone to sleep.
Oh, has she?
Oh,
Has she?
my God. 2012.
Oh, you poor things. We better go, but it's a great talk, but I think we should do this again and just talk, because I think these are issues that we need to talk, and these are difficult issues that nobody wants to talk about, but we really just should, because we want to keep a nice country for everyone can come. So it's just so lovely to sit with you all and talk. So I better let you go, and we'll all come back.
Well, it was really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, everyone.
All right, see you later. Oh,
Good night. Bye.
bye. See you later. Oh, I'm not going to turn it off because I'm going to leave it up because it's not you, but I've got to put up my sign to everyone. Oh, not you. Don't worry about you. But I have to do something. I have to ask for my donations. So I have got it all ready.
How does one donate?
Eh?
How do you do that?
I'm going to
How
put
do
it.
you do that?
I'm going to put it up. Hang on. All right, here it is. Right, I'm going to ask for my donation. All right, here. So everybody on YouTube there. There's my number. All right, everybody on YouTube, Kate Floss, if you've enjoyed watching my video today and you've learned something from it, then you can just go ahead and put a donation into my bank account. I'm not going to give it to anyone, and it's not going to the course, but I might go and buy myself a box of chocolates and something to eat for all the hard work that I'm doing. So I'll see you later, everyone on YouTube. Remember, we want Australia, New Zealand, everybody to come in and join us. And we're fighting for the Commonwealth, fighting to save the Commonwealth. And we all got to stand together as Commonwealth people and save our countries from the United Nations and their dictator laws that they're trying to force on all of our countries. So that's what we've got to do. So see you later, everyone.